Hey everyone, so today we are going to be talking about my favorite type of writing, and I am so excited to get into this. I know it's at the end of the year and I know a lot of you are excited for summer, and that's great. I'm excited too, but I have been waiting literally all year to teach narrative writing. Now, narrative writing has been around since ancient times. It's been a pastime. You'd sit around the fire and you'd tell stories, or if you have something exciting, you tell stories. People love stories. People love to hear them and read them and watch them. We're very social as humans, and storytelling is just an element that people love. And that's why I want to talk about it. Narrative writing is a story or report of connected events, real or imagined, presented in a sequence of written, spoken words, or images, or any combination of those listed. It doesn't matter how you tell it. We're going to be focusing on written expression, as well as doing a little bit of analysis on maybe parts of movies and things like that. The point is, there are elements to narrative writing that we need to discuss, and I'm just so excited. Now, I do want to give a warning. Narrative writing is very, very difficult, and it takes a creative mind as well as a strong work ethic to present a story. And so what I want you guys to reference, if you need to, is my Traits of Good Writing video, which talks about organization, it talks about ideas, it talks about conventions, and all those elements that go into just good writing by itself. But we can go ahead and get into the narrative elements. The first thing I wanted to talk to you guys about, when you start a story, you really need to decide, do I want this to be a real story or something that I just imagined and want to tell anyway? So you need to make the decision, am I going to tell a nonfiction story or am I telling a fiction story? Again, nonfiction means it's real. It's either happened or just in history. It's something that is real. Fiction is more fantasy-based or just simply imagined. It didn't actually happen. Once you've made that decision, you need to think about the setting. Specifically for your class, I want you guys to think about time and place. And time can be the element of what time of day is it, or you can talk about what year is it going to be. But what I would like you guys to keep in mind as you develop these skills, I really want you to think about your character and the setting within their mind, both mentally and psychologically. The next thing that you really need to think about is plot. And of course you guys have learned about plot structure in your reading and literature class, where I'm more grammar and writing based, but you get to create it this time instead of just simply analyzing it. And that's what I really like. You get to be the creator in this setting. Let's go ahead and review plot structure real quick. As most of you know, it begins with a chart. You will see exposition, where it offers the setting, you get the characters, and you kind of set up the story itself, followed by the rising action. This is what pulls your reader in. This gives suspense and develops interest for the reader and creates tension. You need to make the reader want to know what happens next. Most people are familiar with the climax. This is the turning point in the story. And I know that a lot of times people think of climax as like the super exciting part. Climax is normally just the turning point in the story, where everything after that point has changed because of the climax. So the climax doesn't always have to be this huge ordeal, but it traditionally is just because it's some kind of major event taking place. Most people are familiar with falling action taking place after the climax. This is the result of the climax taking place. And then finally we have the resolution, where the conflict is resolved, the loose ends are finally tied up, and the reader is left with either a happy ending or a sad ending. The next thing you would have to decide is, what person are you going to write in? Do you want to be the main character narrating this, in which case you would use first person using words like I, me, we, our. There are some examples of this in writing classics like To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, or we have what's been popular like The Hunger Games or Twilight. First person is normally easier to read as it puts the reader in that character's shoes. Then you have works that are third person. We'll split those into third person limited and third person omniscient. Third person limited is where the author or narrator only knows the thoughts and feelings of one character. One example being J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter. We as readers understand where Harry Potter is in his mind. We understand what he is thinking. We can get into his mind. We know what he wants and things like that, where we don't really know what Dumbledore or Snape or Ron or Hermione are thinking. So we are limited in that aspect. Then you have third person omniscient, and this is where the narrator knows the thoughts and feelings of all the characters. The author or narrator is all-knowing and is choosing when to deliver that information to the reader. One of the best third-person omniscient stories that I've seen is in Stephen King's It. And I'm not just saying that because the remake is coming out this year, but I'm really excited for it. The last thing I wanted to discuss with you guys is character, and I could literally rant about character development and creation, but I will save that for class. What I would like you guys to first be introduced to are words like dynamic and static and flat and round characters. And I know you have gone over this in your literature class, so I'll keep this brief. Dynamic characters go through a change in self. The first character that I think of when I think of a dynamic character is Scrooge from Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, where you start out with this mean, crotchety miser of a man. Nobody likes him. He's just awful. And then by the end, he's this warm, giving, loving, caring person. He went through a huge character development to change throughout the story. And if you've read the story, you can understand why. But he's a great example of a dynamic character. Another character you would deal with would be a character that is static. And a lot of people think a static character is just a minor character, not important. That's false. It just means that the character does not undergo a serious development change. They most likely stay the same throughout the story. One example would be Scar from The Lion King. He always stays his cunning, clever, devious self, and he remains that way up until the ending, which ultimately leads to his demise when he fights Simba. Simba sends him down a cliff, and then the hyenas take their revenge on him. Then you have flat and round characters. Round characters are very developed, and they're complex, and they have history. And normally, these will be protagonists or antagonists as the reader just learns more about them. But it can be side characters as well. A great example would be in J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter, the Deathly Hallows, or before that with the Half-Blood Prince. You start out with this character named Snape in the first couple of books, and you just think he's this mean teacher who hates Harry, and it definitely appears so, but by the end, he's become like this very complex character that you suddenly, oh, maybe he's not the bad guy how I thought, and then you feel bad, and he turns out to be this amazing character that you can't help but falling in love with, and great example of a round character. And then you have flat characters, and flat characters move the plot forward, but don't really show any development. And instead, you get more of traits, one or two traits that you remember these characters by, and they're oftentimes forgettable. I think of Cato from The Hunger Games. Cato is one of the tributes, and the only thing that readers really remember about him is that he was a career, and Katniss has to try to fight him, and careers are bad, so Katniss and Peeta should try to kill him, and there are mutations at the end, these mutations that are trying to kill him slowly, and they have to decide whether or not to put him out of his misery, and basically just a tool to put the plot forward. Other than that, he's not that important. That's all I had for you guys today. Please make sure you look at your notes and fill those out to the best of your ability. I am so excited to get into narrative writing with you and answer all the questions you guys have and just kind of talk about stories in general. Don't be afraid to learn. Bye guys.